Krishna, everyone. We are continuing our sessions on the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, verse number 49 till 49 verse we saw last time. And today I'll start from verse 50 onwards. And we'll cover what we discussed previously and what needs to be discussed from today onwards. I'll start with my prayers and then we'll proceed from there. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We saw previously we saw verse number 41 to 49, and in those verses we looked at the idea of doing yoga, doing actions without karma, without accruing karma, right? And we are Arjuna, again, to just give a context, we are studying the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna and Arjuna are on the battlefield. Arjuna doesn't want to fight the war because he sees his family members. He thinks the war is of no use. He thinks that killing them is useless because the kingdom that will come out of it won't be any good. Men will be killed, children and women will be unprotected, and a lot of negative karma would be generated. So he doesn't want to fight. And Krishna is trying to exhort Arjuna that you should fight. This is your duty. This is the need of the hour. And we looked at some of the arguments from the first chapter. So just to, from the second chapter. So just to give a brief summary of the second chapter, from verse number 1 to 10, we talked about the idea that Arjuna is indecisive and Krishna is now helping Arjuna, trying to understand. So Krishna becomes the guru for Arjuna. Arjuna accepts Krishna as his spiritual master, as his teacher, right? And we saw it from this verse itself. The verse was number 7. This is where Arjuna says that now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So the first 10 verses of the second chapter talked about the idea of Arjuna's indecision and accepting Krishna as his guru. Then we looked at verse number 11 onwards till verse number 30, where Krishna gives us first kind of his argument, his response, where he talks about the idea of Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga, which is the analysis of body and mind, matter and spirit. So what is matter? What is spirit? How do you differentiate between the two? What is the soul, right? And a further division here would be that verses number 11 to 13, these talk about that the soul always exists. You know, it goes from one body to different body. So you should not worry about it, right? Verses 14 to 15 talked about that Arjuna learned to tolerate dualities and developed equanimity, because that will help you be eligible for liberation when you develop equanimity where you're not affected. Then verse 16 to 22 talked about the idea that the body is perishable, right? But the soul is not. Changing body is similar to changing clothes. We looked at that famous verse, na jayate mriyate va kadachin, right? This verse. That as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul accepts new bodies. Then 23 to 25 talked about the nature of the soul. It's invisible, inconceivable, immutable, unbreakable, insoluble, not burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind, etc. Then from 26 to 30, we looked at the idea of that death is, birth and death are both inevitable. You don't need to lament for the soul, but for the body, they'll come and they'll go. So again, the verses 11 to 30 talked about the Sankhya Yoga, that is the analysis of soul and matter. And Krishna is giving his argument in a very logical manner. Then second, from verses 38 to 53 is the Nishkama Karma Yoga, or yoga also known as Buddhi Yoga, that is yoga or doing work without accruing reactions. So that's from verse number 38. I'm sorry, I missed 31 to 37. 31 to 37 is performing your duty, which gives you enjoyment. So 31 to 37. So here he's talking about the idea that if you do your duty, then you'll get heavenly kingdom. Or if you die, you get heavenly kingdom. Or if you don't die, if you win here, then you get this unrivaled kingdom. So Arjuna, there's no loss actually for you. So therefore you do your duty. So here the idea is, so Krishna gives the analysis of the soul and spirit, soul and body. Then from verse number 31 to 37, he talks about the idea that if you do your duty, then you get all kinds of benefits. So you should always do your duty. Just look at from that perspective. And then 38 to 53 onwards, he gives the idea that, Arjuna, doing your duty, you should do you have these benefits, but even then, to truly convert it into yoga, right? This is sakam karma, that is karma that accrues reactions. But to truly understand how to do your duty, you have to do it without being attached to reactions. And that's what Krishna is talking about from verses 38 to 53. In that, we'll look at a quick division. So for example, 38, he says that, do your duty for the sake of it. And that way you won't incur sin, because Arjuna raised an argument that I will incur sin by fighting. So Krishna says that if you do your duty just for the sake of it, without considering happiness, loss, or distress, then there is no sin, right? So then 39 to 40 talks about the idea of Buddhi Yoga, or use of intelligence. So Krishna says that here there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement can protect you. He says that I have described you through analytical study, that was right before, and now he's explaining through Buddhi Yoga. And what is this Buddhi Yoga? Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, it is mentioned here, this intelligence. So that's verses 41 to 46. So these are the verses that talk about the intelligence. And what is the intelligence? The intelligence is that your intelligence should be focused on serving the divine, serving the supreme. How? By following the instructions. In the battlefield, Arjuna, the instruction is for you to do whatever I'm telling you. That's what Krishna's argument is. And if you do that duty with one-pointed intelligence, then what happens? You will be resolute in your purpose, and you won't be affected just like you're getting affected right now. People who are irresolute have many branched intelligence. And then Krishna says that these irresolute people get affected by the words of the Vedas. They think about good birth, power, heavenly planets, sense gratification, etc. But Arjuna, you should understand that your intelligence should be fixed. Your intelligence should be fixed on my instructions and my actions, and understanding your connection with the Supreme. That way, these things won't affect you. So that's exactly why this is known as Buddhi Yoga, or use of intelligence. Right? People who are too attached, they are bewildered, they are not intelligent, and they look at Vedas. And Vedas primarily talk about the three modes of nature. This is all we looked last time. But what you need to do, Arjuna, is you need to be free from these dualities. So you don't need to just look at Veda, you need to look at Vedanta, the conclusion of the Vedas. And if you go, and today also it's actually true that when you look at just Vedas as a whole, you will get confused regarding all kinds of rituals. They are also known as karma kanda, various activities that are recommended in the Vedas. And we wonder, what do we do, which duties to do, which duties to not do, right? So ultimately, the conclusion of the Vedas is to be understood. And that's exactly the reason why. So that's exactly the reason why the Vedas were written by Vyasa. And then towards the end of his life, he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is basically the summary study of the entire Vedanta Sutra. So to give a bit background, there was only one Veda, which was Rig Veda. There was only that one Veda that existed. But as Kali Yuga was coming on, what happened was the sages sat together and decided that what should we do for the people of Kali Yuga? These people are not very intelligent. They can't remember things. The Vedas previously were known as Smriti or Shruti. Shruti means that which is said, and Smriti means that which is remembered. So the Vedas were actually just a spoken tradition. That's how the tradition flew. And that's how the tradition went across time and space. But what happened towards the start of Kali Yuga, that the tradition started disappearing. Why? Because people of Kali Yuga were Manda Sumanda Mati or Manda Bhagya Upatrita. That means they were Manda and Sumanda. That means that they're not very intelligent. They have very limited attention span. They can't remember things. So in order to help those people, Vyasa, sage Vyasadeva or Veda Vyasa, what he did was he compiled that, he broke that one Veda which was only spoken into written, and he broke it into three: Sama, Yajur, and Riga. So these three came, and then he took some parts of these three Vedas and created the fourth one, known as Atharva Veda. And these Atharva Vedas, these Vedas talk about various rituals that you can do to go to heaven, to go to other planets, what's happening on which planet, how can you please this demigod, how can you please that demigod. So it has a lots of rituals and sacrifices that you can perform, etc. Then he wrote the conclusion of those Vedas, known as Vedanta, right? That's the end of the Vedas. And in those Vedanta is where we have Upanishads, which talks about going beyond what's happening in the world. So what's happening in the world is dharma, artha, and kama, right? Activities that you do. And then comes moksha, which is basically going beyond this world. So that is given in the Vedanta. Now, to conclude Vedanta, he wrote something known as Vedanta Sutra. A sutra is basically an aphorism, a text, a small saying, an aphorism, tenet, if you will, that is very short, very concise, which can be opened up to variety of meanings. And sutra in Sanskrit means a thread. So it's basically a thread that ties the entire philosophical argument together in one concise argument. So that was the Vedanta Sutra that he wrote. Then he wrote various Puranas, because various people won't be able to understand the import and the significance and the depth of the Vedanta Sutra. So then he wrote Itihasas, the history, the Puranas, stories. And then he wrote all of that. And even then he was not satisfied. And he didn't know why. So he reached out to his spiritual master, Narada. Sage Vyasa reached out to Narada and said that, my dear teacher, just like Arjuna is asking here, Krishna, my dear teacher, I don't know what to do in life. Right? I don't know what to fight, whether to not fight. I'm just so confused. So similarly, Vyasa was at his ashram in Badrikashram, and he's praying. He says that he's praying to his teacher. He says that, oh teacher, I don't know why I'm sad, why I'm dejected. I have written all of these incredible Vedas. I have all of this incredible knowledge that I've compiled together from my deep meditation, and yet I feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied. What's the cause? And then Narada explained that, my dear Vyasa, you have given all kinds of traditions, you have given all kinds of histories, you have given all kinds of rituals, you have given all kinds of knowledge about the world and the universe, but you have not talked about the most important thing. That is our connection with the Supreme. And you have not explored the Supreme. You have not defined who God is. What does he do? What is his activity? So you have not enunciated the path of the Bhagavata, or the connection with the Supreme, all the divine. And so you need to write about that, and that will bring you satisfaction. And so Vyasa, realizing the instructions of his teacher and writing about what's the most important thing for us as human beings, that is to connect with the divine and to follow the instructions of the divine and understand our nature, understand the nature of our divine conscious source and our relationship with that. So when Vyasa wrote that, that ended up becoming the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a text which has 18,000 verses, also known as Bhagavad Puran, which comes after the Bhagavad Gita. So the point is, to conclude, what I'm trying to say is that once you don't know what you need to do in life, you need to reach out to a teacher, right? And the teacher guides you. So Arjuna was guided by Krishna, that follow my instruction, and following my instruction, the instructions of a guru, you will be able to achieve. Why? Because I'm talking about establishing your connection with the Supreme. And same exact thing was told to Vyasa by his teacher, that you don't know Vyasa, here I'm telling you my instruction is establish the connection with the Supreme and write about that, and then you'll be satisfied. So true satisfaction for human beings, living entities, not just human beings, for every living entity, is to reestablish our connection with our divine conscious source. So the Vedas, that's why Krishna is saying that the Vedas only deal with the modes of material nature. And we'll look into the three modes, what are they in a future topic once that chapter comes. So people who just get affected by the Vedas, they don't know, they have no idea. They are affected by the flowery words of the Vedas. And that's why they need higher philosophy, higher tattva, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, which goes into the deeper philosophical idea of connecting with our supreme conscious source and the idea of yoga. So people who are affected by the Vedas, their intelligence is many branch. They go hither and thither. They don't know. Just like Vyasa was, because he was affected by the words of the Vedas. But then on the instructions of his teacher, he became resolute in purpose, and his aim was one, to enunciate the teachings of the divine and to establish what are the primary ways we can connect with the supreme. What is the supreme? Where does he live? What does he do? And establish the path of pure devotional service, also known as bhakti. Now, so this is what we looked at last time, that anybody who can understand the purpose of the Vedas, anyone who can understand the purpose of the Vedas can truly serve the Vedas actually. But somebody who doesn't know the purpose cannot serve the Vedas, right? He'll just get bewildered by the Vedas. So that's the point. And then finally, we looked at verse 47 to 49, which is how to perform this action without reactions, how to do this Nishkama Karma Yoga. And Krishna explains that you don't think about the fruits of action, right? So every action that we do has a fruit. For example, if I'm cooking something, then what's the fruit of that? The food that I cook, right? So every action has a reaction. You don't have to worry about that fruits of that action or that reaction. You just focus on the act, and that way you'll free yourself. So perform your duty, Arjuna, without thinking that whether you'll win the war, you'll lose the war, you'll die, or you will be alive, or you'll kill somebody, or you'll get killed. No, just do the duty. And by doing that duty, you will remain you will come to a point of equanimity, which is known as yoga, sthita, or sthita dhira. Dhira sthiti is known as, it's known as yoga stha kuru karmani. So this sthiti, or this state, is known as a state of yoga stha. It's also known as state of dhira or sthiti. That means that you are satisfied, you are fixed in your consciousness, fixed in your action, and that way you'll be able to rise above these doubts that have arisen in your mind. So this is what we saw last time, up until last time. Now we look from verse number 50th to 53. I'll just do 3 verses today. We'll keep it short. Sorry, 4 verses, and then we'll do follow-up verses pretty soon. I know I'm running behind with a few sessions, but we'll catch up in these shorter sessions. So verse number 50. Buddhi yugdo jahati ha ubhe shukrita dushkrita tasmad yogaya yujasva yoga karma sukaushalam. Buddhi yukta, one who is engaged in devotional service using buddhi, right? We are looking at the idea of buddhi yoga, use of intelligence. Jahati, can get rid of. Iha, in this life. Ubhe, both. Sukrit, dushkrit, good and bad, right? Su means good, du means bad. So sukrit, dushkrit, both good and bad results. Tasman, therefore, yogaya, for the sake of devotional service or for the sake of action, yujiswa, be so engaged. Yoga, Krishna consciousness, karmasu, in all activities, kaushalam, art. So what is Krishna saying? A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So Krishna is explaining the benefits of engaging in intelligence yoga or buddhi yoga. That once you are engaged in this path, which is the path of devotional service, so this path of using your intelligence to perform yoga is not different from bhakti. Why? Because when you're using your intelligence, you truly understand what your connection with the divine is and how you're acting based on those instructions. Even if you don't understand it, if you just act on it, you'll get the benefit. So a man who does this rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Why? Because both good and bad reactions are cause of bondage. If you think of good reactions, they're considered to be like what do you call, like chains that are made of gold, and bad reactions are chains that are made of iron. Both these chains, they bind you. If you do good activities, sometimes people say, oh, just do good for everyone. But you have to understand, what does that entail? What does doing good entail? Doing good for somebody means that you have to get the reactions of all the good actions that you have performed, either in this life or either in the next life. That means you'll have to take another birth in a higher planetary system or in an advanced state of life where you can get rid of those fruits that have come your way. Or if you do bad, then you accrue bad reactions or negative reactions, and then you have to take birth in a society or in a state or in a form in which you have to go through and suffer those bad reactions. So you either enjoy those bad reactions or you suffer. And as a result, doing both, you end up staying in the world. But the entire idea is that we have to transcend the world, because we are not the body. We are spirit beings, as Krishna has very clearly established. As spirit souls, we come from a spiritual nature, from a spiritual planet, from a spiritual area. And to go back to that spiritual space, we really have to get rid of both bad activities and good activities, and just do activities in an equipoise manner, without being affected by the good or bad. And that's what Krishna has been explaining so far. So therefore, Arjuna, you should strive for this kind of work. That means doing your duty for the sake of it, just because I am telling you, just because it's the path of righteousness, and just because that's how Nishkam karma is done, with your full intelligence. This is the art of all work, right? And here Prabhupada further explains that we accumulate good and bad reactions all our life. And as a result, we sometimes get good birth, sometimes get bad birth, sometimes go from one body to another body, human body to animal body to plant body. And this continues. Why? Because we keep accruing these good and bad results. And now it's the time. Now it's the time to get above it. That's why the very first verse of the Vedanta Sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa, that now in this human form of life, question that why am I here? What am I doing here? What is the purpose of this life? So we have to start with that question. That's how Arjuna started the Bhagavad Gita. He asked Krishna, I don't know, Krishna, what to do. Help me. So it always begins with the inquiry. And that's the question. And once you make that inquiry, it's at that point, then you start getting these answers by following the path of these great teachers, like the text of the Bhagavad Gita, and the great teachers that have expounded the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. And that's when you truly understand what is truly important in life. And then you can perform action which is devoid of these good and bad reactions, and you're doing action just for the sake of it, while pursuing a higher intelligence and while pursuing a higher path of devotional service of Buddhi Yoga. And then you can get rid of it, realize yourself, and truly connect with your supreme source. Verse number 51. Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishina janma bandhva vinirmukta padam gacchanti anamayam. Karmajam, due to fruitive activities. Buddhi yukta, being engaged in devotional service. He, certainly. Phalam, results. Tyaktva, giving up. Manishina, great sages or devotees. Janma bandha, from the bondage of birth and death. Vinirmukta, liberated. Padam, position. Gacchanti, they reach. Anamayam, without miseries. What is Krishna saying? He says that by thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, this Buddhi Yukta, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in this material world. So Arjuna, you want to get free of the results of the sinful reactions of the positive? You engage in this devotional service, Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries. In this way, they free themselves from the cycle of birth and death. Why? Because if they don't get positive reactions and if they don't get negative reactions, then they basically have no reactions. And no reactions means no body. That means what happens when you don't have a body? You situate yourself in your true existence, which is the state beyond all miseries, by going back to Godhead, or by connecting with your divine conscious source and establishing yourself in that state. So you don't go through this cycle. This cycle is also known as the cycle of samsara, right? Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, jatane sharanam, iha samsare, bahu dukkhare, kripa apare, pahi murare. The great sage Adi Shankaracharya wrote this song called Bhaj Govindam, and in which he says, Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Birth again, death again, birth again, death again. We keep going through these cycles one after the other, without knowing what is the purpose of life. Right? We go from the womb to the tomb, and it just continues. And this world is like that. So, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate. Oh, fool. He's talking to somebody who was in his advanced stage and still talking about grammar and reading grammar. And he says, oh, fool, this grammar won't help you. Bhaja Govindam, worship Govinda, follow his instructions, follow his teachings. And by doing that, you will transcend this world. So Arjuna, you are not of this world. You are in this world, but you are not of it. And you have to get above it. And you have to get beyond it. So don't be affected by the negative reactions and the positive reactions. Do your actions in such a way that you don't accrue any reactions, and follow my instructions as I'm giving it to you. And that way, by establishing yourself in the sense of in the science of soul, in my instructions, on the path of dharma, on the path of righteousness, you will achieve everything that I'm telling you. So therefore, Arjuna, free yourself, just like great sages or devotees have done that in a past state. Right? There's another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam that is quoted here. One of my absolutely favorite verses. Samashritaye padapallavam mahat padam punya yasho murari bhavam buddhir vatsa padam param padam yad vipadam natesham. What does it say? Samashritaye padapallavam. For one who accepts the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, mahat padam punya yasho murari, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is known as Mukunda, or somebody who gives mukti, somebody who gives you liberation. Bhavam buddhir vatsa padam param padam. To that person, this ocean of material world becomes water contained in a calf's hoof print. So if you see a cow, and then the cow has a calf, and you see the hoof of the calf, right? The foot of a calf, it's very tiny. So the ocean, this ocean becomes like water contained in that little footprint of that calf. So this world of miseries and crazy existences and crazy situations just becomes very tiny. Parampadam, it becomes Parampadam, or the place where there are no miseries, or Vaikunta, right? And then not this place where there is danger in every step of life. So, my dear Arjuna, what Krishna is telling here is that if you take the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is known as Mukunda, giver of mukti, then this world where there is danger is in every step, padam padam yad vipadam, where there is danger in every step, it becomes natesham. This danger goes away. Why? Because this ocean of miseries become like the water contained in a calf's hoof print. So very poignant and a very beautiful analogy, a very beautiful example that is given here, right? So owing to our ignorance, we think that this material world is our home and this body is us, but actually that's not the situation. By truly understanding our divine nature, we establish ourselves in Buddhi Yoga, we establish our connection with the Supreme, and as a result, we free ourselves from the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, Arjuna, do devotional service, do Buddhi Yoga, use your intelligence to connect with my instructions, to follow my instructions, and as a result, you will free yourself from the cycle of birth and death. Why? Because you will not accrue any reactions in place. And so this miseries, the world of miseries will just shrink for you. Therefore, it is known as Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga or devotional service to the Supreme. Verse 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyati tarishyati tadagantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. Yada, when te, your moha of illusion, kalilam, dense forest, buddhi, transcendental service with intelligence, vyatitarishyati, surpasses, tada, at that time, gantasi, you shall go, nirvedam, callousness, shrotavasya, toward all that is to be heard, shrutasya, all that is to be heard, cha. So what is Krishna saying? When your intelligence is passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. So Arjuna, again, referring back to the science of Buddhi Yoga, that when your intelligence passes this dense forest of delusion, which you are going through right now, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. That means that the words of this material world won't affect you. You will remain in a fixed consciousness, the consciousness of yoga sthiti that we have seen, or achala buddhi, or vyavasayatmika buddhi. What happens? That is the intelligence where you are one-pointed, where you are resolute, where you are not deviated by the words of the Vedas, not deviated by words of the people in this world. You are fixed. You're fixed in your consciousness, you're fixed in your actions, you're situated in the highest platform of devotional service. And at that point, you'll be able to perform your action without considering for good, without considering for bad. And as a result, you will be fixed. You will understand my instructions to the core, and you will pass out of this dense forest of delusion, and you will be able to act. Remember, Arjuna is unable to act. Arjuna gives up his bow, gives up his arrow, and he says that I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't want to fight. So Arjuna is in a state of dense forest of delusion. Why? Because he's not using his intelligence. But when he uses his intelligence by the words of Krishna to establish his connection with Krishna, by following his instructions, by analytically understanding the difference between soul and matter, by understanding what is action without reactions, by understanding what is action with reactions, by understanding the importance of intelligence, at that point, Arjuna, you won't care what any of these people say in the battlefield or what the Vedas say, because you will become indifferent, because you will understand your true spiritual nature. Verse number 53. Shruti vipratipanna te yada sthasyati nischala samadhav achala buddhis tada yogam avapashyasi. Shruti of Vedic revelation. Remember, the Vedas were known as Shruti, something that was heard. Vipratipanna, without being influenced by the fruitive results. Te, your, yada, when, sthasyati, remains, nischala, right, unmoved, irresolute, samadhav, in transcendental consciousness, in that samadhi, achala, unflinching, buddhi, intelligence, tada, at that time, yogam, self-realization, avapashyasi, you will achieve. So how do we achieve self-realization? One of the goals that we established before starting this Bhagavad Gita discussion is by fixing our intelligence on the instructions of the Supreme. By fixing our instructions on the our intelligence on the instructions of the Supreme, understanding our true nature and acting according to that, by doing duty for the sake of it, that's when we become Nischala Samadho. Samadhi, we attain a state of transcendental consciousness which is unmoved, and unflinching buddhi, achala buddhi, unflinching intelligence. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, or by whatever people say, or whatever is said in the world, when you truly know who you are and what the purpose of life is, at that point you remain fixed in the trance of self-realization, and then you will have attained the divine consciousness. And that's the point, Arjuna, that hearing about intelligence in fixed buddhi, now you will know what it truly means to act without performing action and just do your duty. And then you will get, what will you achieve? You will achieve self-realization. That's the state of samadhi. Samadhi just means that we achieve self-realization. Some people think that samadhi is when you go underneath the ground and you remain in that state for 4 or 5 years or for ages to come. No, samadhi means even while on a battlefield, you can achieve a state of samadhi. Why? Because it is the state of self-realization. When you understand yourself as the spirit soul, not just understand, you realize it to your core. And when you act accordingly, that's the state of samadhi. And you can achieve it anywhere in the world, on a battlefield, in your home, underneath the ground, or in the sky, anywhere. Because at that point, you're not affected by the words of the Vedas or the flowery language of the Vedas. You understand the purpose of the Vedas is self-realization. You go to the Vedanta, the conclusion of the Vedas, and you act according to the instructions of the Supreme. So we looked at the brief history of what we have discussed so far, how we came to this point in time. We saw that in the second chapter, Arjuna gives his indecision in the first 10 verses. Then Krishna explains the analysis of body and spirit, the Sankhya Yoga. Then we looked at Sakam Karma, what is karma with fruitive actions, from verse 31 to 37. And 38 to 53, which is this section that we have been looking at, talked about the idea of Nishkam Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. Yoga with intelligence and yoga which does not lead to reactions. When you perform that, when you develop that Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, Nischala Samadhi, or Achala Buddhi, that means you are truly situated in a higher sense of realization, and you can truly act in this world without accruing reactions, understanding your connection with the Supreme without being affected by the words of the Vedas, words of the people in this world. And you can truly situate yourself in that transcendental divine consciousness. And now what happens? Now, once Arjuna understands this, in the next chapter, Arjuna then asks, what are the characteristics of a person who is situated in this consciousness, who is also known as Sthita Prajna, or Prajna means intelligence and Sthita means fixed. So somebody who is situated in that fixed intelligence, what is his realization? How does he act in this world? What does he do? So from verse 54 to 72 onwards, we look at symptoms of such a person. So Krishna gives the the argument to Arjuna that you should situate yourself in that consciousness. And once you do, you will attain self-realization, and you will be cleared from this dense misery, dense illusion that you are situated in. So once Arjuna understands that principle and that idea, then he asks, okay, Krishna, I understand what you're saying, but what does that person look like, and what do I need to do? So see the verse number 54, from which we'll look next. He's asking, oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one who is merged in transcendence, or who is situated in this higher level of consciousness? How does he speak? What is his language? And how does he sit? And how does he walk? Like, what does he do? What kind of a person are we talking about? I want to know. And then Krishna gives. So from 54 onwards till 72, we will look at the symptoms of such a person, and what does it mean to be situated in a higher consciousness. We understand the principle, we understand the idea from Krishna, but what does it truly mean, and how is it expressed through the human body, through our human actions? So we look at that next time. Thank you very much for joining, and those who will be listening to this later, take care. Hare Krishna.